Have you ever felt like you're being watched by someone or something while being entirely alone? Once there was a hunter who was in the middle of the woods. After a long day of hunting, he had lost his bearings, so he just decided to go one direction until he could find a way out. After a few hours, he found a small cabin. Having no other choice as it was getting really dark, he decided to see if he could stay there for the night. The door was open, no one was inside. He went on the bed and just decided he would apologize and explain himself to the owner of the cabin in the morning. But as he tried to go to sleep, he saw the entire cabin was decorated with portraits, all painted in extreme detail. Their faces weren't normal. They were all twisted, angry, and hateful. These disturbing paintings made him really uncomfortable, but he just tried to ignore them as much as he could and went to sleep. As he woke up the next morning, he got up from the bed and realized that there are no portraits on the walls of the cabin at all. Instead, they were windows. This is why you should never reply to a stranger's email. For a boy named John, one mysterious email would change everything. So one day John went on his laptop to find an email from two girls. These two girls claimed that they were his older sisters, which confused him because he knew he was an only child. But these girls said that his bedroom had been their bedroom, and they lived happily until one horrible night. John opened an attachment in the email that he got, and it was an old newspaper article saying that two sisters were murdered in his hometown. They were lying in bed when an intruder broke in. No one heard anything, and in the morning, the parents found the sisters in the closet. They had been skinned. No intruder or motive was ever found. In this email, these girls said that they were angry that everyone forgot about them, and angry that their parents decided to move on with a new baby, a boy named John. They were angry that their brother never knew about them until now. John, of course, didn't believe any of this, so he sent an email back saying that he knew the newspaper was fake and to stop trying to scare him. But only minutes later, he got another email, and what this email said would terrify him. Follow for part 2. This is why you should never reply to a stranger's email. John got an email from two girls claiming to be his sisters even though he was an only child. What's even stranger is that these girls claimed that they were murdered in his house. They were found skinned in the closet. When the investigation failed and no one was found responsible, the parents decided to move on with a new baby. That baby was John, who grew up without knowing anything about his sisters. That's what the emails claimed anyways. John replied to this email saying that he didn't believe them, but that was his fatal mistake. Minutes later, he got another email. It said, "If you don't believe us, look in the closet." The next morning, John was gone. His parents called the police, who found the emails on his laptop and the closet door slightly open. Then they saw what would shock them. They found John in his closet, also skinned alive. Nowhere in the house was there any sign of an intruder. Then when they looked closer, they found something else. A row of faint writing on the wall that read Lisa and Sarah 1993. Then just below it, freshly carved into the wood, John 2007. If this happened to you at work, would you quit your job? One day, a janitor at a hospital in Indonesia was working the night shift alone, and understandably, the part of the hospital he hated cleaning the most, especially at night, was the morgue. But he went in that night, finished cleaning, and felt like someone was watching him. He thought he must just be psyching himself out. When he finished cleaning, he went outside, but the electricity suddenly shut off. Then he heard the sound of a woman crying. This is when he started feeling scared, but he could have never guessed what the crying sound was coming from. The last room he was meant to clean was one of the operating rooms. When he opened the curtain, he saw a pale nurse underneath the bed looking up at him. She started crawling out from under the bed, and he saw that her legs had been broken clean off. That's when he recognized her. She was a nurse who was killed years ago by a doctor who badly abused her, then crushed her legs so she couldn't run away. The police had found her buried in a shallow grave. As she kept dragging herself along the floor, the janitor froze. He couldn't run and he couldn't scream. But as soon as she was out of sight, he packed up his things and quit his job the next day. If you're ever studying late at night, don't do what she did. One night, a girl was studying alone in the library. It was around 2 in the morning, so she was getting pretty tired. But as soon as she shifted her books around, she noticed something strange. It was a website URL written on the desk. This made her curious, so she went on one of the computers in the library and typed in the website. But what she saw sent chills down her spine. It was a photo of a woman walking down a busy street, but it looked like it was taken from a distance, and the woman didn't know that she was being photographed. This made the girl feel uneasy, so she shut down the computer, grabbed her things, and left. But the next day, she became more curious. She thought it must be some kind of a joke, but she was too tired to notice, so she went back and typed in the website again. But this time, the image had turned into something terrifying. It was the same woman lying on the floor with a knife in her chest. The girl shut off the computer and called the police. After the call, she opened the computer again, but the photo had changed. It was now a photo of a girl in a library, taken from the back. It was a photo of her looking at the website. Underneath the photo was the caption, "You are my next internet star." Do you know someone who wants to be around you all the time? For one newly married couple, this quickly turned into something more terrifying. So this couple got married and moved into their new house together. Soon the husband noticed that his wife became more attached to him than usual, as in she wouldn't be able to spend one moment away from him. She said, "When you're not at home, I still feel you near me. I hear you calling my name." He just thought that she was being sweet, but the truth is not so simple. One day after he got back from work, his wife said, "I think there's something wrong with me. You walked from the kitchen to the bedroom and was staring out the window all day." But the husband knew that he was at work all day. Over the next few days, she started acting even weirder, until one night she was next to her husband and said, "You're not here. You're there. You're in the kitchen." Then they both heard a noise. The husband walked into the kitchen to investigate, and he saw himself standing there with a blank, lifeless expression on his face. This man, or whoever it was, walked out of the kitchen and disappeared into the hallway. And as the husband went back into his bedroom to get his wife, he heard someone's voice coming from behind him. It was his wife's voice, only it wasn't, and it whispered into his ear, "We are here to stay forever."
This is a movie that Disney tried to hide from you.
It's called The Black Cauldron, and it came out in 1985. And it was actually Disney's first ever PG rating. And 12 minutes of the film actually had to be cut from the movie before it even came out because it was just not appropriate for kids. It's about a young boy and a bunch of his misfit friends who embark on a quest to find a dark magic item of ultimate power before a diabolical tyrant can. This villain is called the Horned King, and he's one of the scariest Disney characters ever. Disney got a lot of backlash from this movie when it first came out. It was actually one of the greatest box office duds of 1985. Disney literally had to pull this film from theaters and place it in a deep, deep vault. In 1998, it was finally released on VHS. And I know when I was a kid, I used to watch it all the time, and it definitely did give me nightmares. Now it's available to watch on like Disney Plus, and it's very easy to find. After this movie came out, Disney wanted to restore their brand with friendly movies. So the movies that came out after Black Cauldron were super happy and uplifting.
If you're ever driving late at night, don't do what they did. One night, a boy and his friend were on their way to a school dance when they saw a girl on the side of the road looking lost. They stopped the car and asked if she needed a ride, and she asked them to take her home. They said that they were going to a school dance and asked if she wanted to come too. She agreed. But these boys wouldn't know yet that this girl was not an average hitchhiker. So they all got in the car and the girl sat in the back seat. After a while, the girl would constantly say that she was cold, so one of the boys gave her his jacket. They got to the dance and things were pretty normal, but what happened after would make the boys question reality. When the night was almost over, it was finally time to take the girl home. When they almost arrived, the girl told them where she lived but told them to drop her off close by so she can walk the rest of the way. So that's what they did. But after the girl walked away, the boy who let her borrow his jacket realized that he never asked for his jacket back. His friend said that they could just come back tomorrow for it. The next morning, they came back expecting to get the jacket and leave, but things were not so simple. They came up to the girl's house and knocked on the door, but they were shocked at what they discovered as soon as the door opened. Follow for part 2. If you're ever driving late at night, don't do what they did. Two boys picked up a girl on the side of the road while they were on their way to a school dance. In the car, she kept saying that she was cold, so one of the boys gave her his jacket. But when the night ended and they were about to drop her off, the girl accidentally left with the jacket. So the boys said that they would just come back the next day to get it. But when they came back and knocked on her door, they discovered something that would make them question what is real and what isn't. An old woman opened the door and asked them who they were looking for. After talking to her for a while, it was revealed that the girl they found on the side of the road was her daughter. But the thing is, she had been dead for 12 years. She was killed in a car accident at the same street corner they first saw her. The old woman pointed to a cemetery down the road and said, "That's where we buried her." The boys didn't believe her at first. They'd spent the whole night with this girl, so they knew that she had to be real. But they went to the cemetery and saw the boy's jacket draped over a gravestone. And on the gravestone was the girl's name and the date of her death, exactly 12 years ago to the day.
This is the story of the disappearance of Margaret Ellen Fox, and yes, the phone call at the end of the story is real. This is a picture of Margaret, and she had just graduated the 8th grade, and she decided that she wanted to get some babysitting gigs. This all takes place in the summer of 1974, and Margaret lived in Burlington, New Jersey. Margaret put out her phone number looking for these babysitting gigs, and on June 19th, this guy by the name of John Marshall called her asking for her to babysit his 5-year-old son. The job was in Mount Holly, New Jersey, and Margaret's parents were kind of weird about it because she was only in 8th grade and she'd be traveling to a different city. But she gave them John Marshall's phone number, so they were okay with it. John had some babysitting stuff set up for her on a weekend, but he postponed it 3 times. Eventually, he called her again and said this time it was for real and he would pick her up in a red Volkswagen. Margaret told her parents that she would call right when she got there, but no call. A few hours went by and still no call. And she was supposed to be home at 2:30, but then she didn't show up. And then hours went by and she still didn't show up. Part 2 coming now. Part 2 of the disappearance of Margaret Ellen Fox, and yes, the phone call at the end of this story is real. So Margaret is missing and they have not heard from her. So they use the phone number that she left them and it starts ringing. A lady picks up and Margaret's mom asks, is somebody by the name of John Marshall there? And she's like, there's no one here named John Marshall. And the lady hangs up on her and so they start freaking out again. So they call the phone number again and yet a different voice picks up this time. And so it turns out that phone number is the phone number of a payphone outside of a store. It was all so suspicious, but then they found out that the manager of that store, his name was John Marshall. One of the cops actually knew this John Marshall, and he said, it's not him, trust me, he couldn't have done it. And so they quickly just ruled him out. Once the media got wind of what was going on and spread the news, a lot of other people said that they also got the same call from a guy named John Marshall for fake babysitting gigs. This goes to show that this was no accident, no coincidence, and Margaret was targeted. Last part 3, coming right now, and yes, it has the phone call in it. Part 3, the last part of the disappearance of Margaret Ellen Fox, and yes, the phone call at the end of this video is real. So Margaret was still missing. It was clearly not a coincidence. She was targeted by this guy going by the name of John Marshall. Margaret's parents have no idea where she is. They are worried sick, and the only way that they had to contact her was the number of that random payphone. Which I don't think is such a coincidence, but you can decide that in the comments. But one night, Margaret's parents are just sitting around the house and they get this phone call. It is from a man who is supposedly connected with the whole Margaret thing and demanding $10,000 to save her life. Here's the phone call.
$10,000 might be a lot of bread, but your daughter's life is the buttered topping.
Who is it?
$10,000 might be a lot of bread, but your daughter's life is the buttered topic? Who talks like that? Also, this is what scientists think that she would look like now, but we don't know. Now Margaret would be 60 years old, and if you...
Have you let anyone borrow your phone before? One woman let her son borrow her phone, but she could have never expected the terrifying things she saw after she got her phone back. So this woman got her new phone and she put it on the kitchen counter and went to watch some TV. That's when her son came in and asked if he could borrow the phone to play with it. The woman didn't think much of it at first, so she agreed, but she could have never known that this would lead to a terrifying discovery. When it was nighttime, she got ready to tuck her son into bed, so she went upstairs to his room, but he wasn't there. Then she ran over to her room and saw him sleeping on her bed with the new phone in his hand. She felt relieved, so she took her phone back and started looking through it. At first, nothing was out of the ordinary. She saw her background had changed, but it wasn't until she saw the photos that she found the horrifying surprise. There were many new photos on her phone that her son took around the house, the front door, the kitchen, and even photos of her taken from the back when she was watching TV. She started deleting these photos until the last one caught her eye. Instantly, she turned around, terrified. It was a photo of her son sleeping in her bed, but it was taken by someone else, someone standing above him, and on the edge of the photo was half of a stranger's face. Can you solve this mystery? This is the story of 8 college students who went on a mountain climbing trip that went terribly wrong. One of them went insane and the other one went missing. But what really happened here, and what are the rest of them hiding? All the clues are hidden in what I'm about to say. So these 8 college students decided to climb the tallest mountain in their area, but the weather took an unexpected turn for the worse and they ended up stranded there for 2 weeks, unable to come back down. After 2 weeks, a rescue team found them, but there were only 7 of them left. The 8th climber was missing, and the 7th climber had gone completely insane and had to be put in a mental hospital. The remaining 6 climbers made a full recovery, and when the police began questioning them, all their answers were the same. They say the 8th climber went to find help and never came back. Then the police went to the mental hospital to talk to the 7th climber, just to see if he knew something that the rest of them didn't. But when they tried to talk to him, all he did was bang his head on the wall and repeat 8888. What happened to the missing 8th climber? And what drove the 7th climber to insanity? Can you solve this mystery? Can you solve this mystery? This is the story of an old man who heard about how a scientist discovered a way to stay young forever, but things went terribly wrong. The scientist is hiding something, and all the clues to what really happened are hidden in what I'm about to say. So this old man went to the scientist and asked him to make him young again. The scientist agreed and said that he invented a machine that would use the old man's cells to create a young, healthy body. Then the old man's memories would be transplanted into the new body and he would be young again. The old man thought this was great news and agreed instantly. But things weren't so simple. The old man laid down on the bed to get ready for the procedure. A few hours later, he asked, when will it begin? Then a young man walked into the room and said to the scientist, my procedure went so well, but what are you going to do with my old body? The scientist replied to him, it will be disposed of in the incineration facility. The old man was so impressed. He said, wow, the person before me seemed to have amazing results. I can't wait for my turn. What really happened here, and what was the scientist hiding? Can you solve this mystery? Can you solve this mystery? This is a story of 3 girls who heard a rumor about a tunnel being haunted. They didn't believe it, so they went inside, but something terrifying happened that made them question reality. Can you figure out the truth here? All the clues to what really happened are hidden in what I'm about to say. So these 3 girls went into the tunnel that was rumored to be haunted by the ghost of a girl who died there. Her case remained unsolved and no body was ever found. This intrigued the 3 girls, so they decided to pay the tunnel a visit. When they first looked into the tunnel, it was pitch black. This scared them, but they decided that they wouldn't believe the ghost stories they heard and went in anyways. One of the girls even had an idea. She said, let's just run through the entire tunnel as fast as we can. But none of them expected what would happen next. The 3 girls ran into the dark tunnel and didn't stop until they reached the other side. Then one of the girls said, I told you the stories weren't true. There are no ghosts here. The second girl said, yeah, holding hands definitely made it less scary. I'm glad I was in the middle. Me too, said the third. What really happened here? Can you solve this mystery? Can you solve this mystery? This is a story of a missing woman who crossed a bridge one night and was never seen again. But something isn't adding up here. Where is this missing woman and why does she go missing? All the clues to what really happened are hidden in what I'm about to say. So this woman left work and went home one night like normal, but she realized that she forgot to get the groceries. Now, the grocery store that she wanted to go to was on the other side of a suspension bridge, so she thought that since it was a nice night, she would make the trip. She crossed the bridge and made it to the grocery store by 10 p.m. that night, quickly got her groceries before closing time, and went back home. The next day, she saw on the TV that the same suspension bridge she had crossed last night collapsed. Several people died in the wreckage, and they have yet to be identified. The collapse is believed to have happened between 10 p.m. and 11 p.m. The woman didn't make it to work that morning, and all of her friends and family members never heard from her again. What really happened to her? Can you solve this mystery?
Dark Things Disney Doesn't Want You to Know, Part 4. Today, let's talk about the mysterious disappearance of Rebecca Corium. Rebecca Corium was a 24-year-old worker on the Disney Wonder cruise ship. On March 22, 2011, while working on the cruise ship, Rebecca disappeared without a trace. This is one of the last photos taken of her, and it was from CCTV footage. At 5:45 a.m. that morning, footage revealed Rebecca talking on the phone with someone. She seemed visibly distressed. Now here's where it gets twisted. Many people believe that Disney knows exactly what happened to Rebecca, but are trying to cover up this whole thing. Let me explain. For starters, the captain of the ship said that Rebecca was just washed over by a big wave. They then gave Rebecca's parents a sandal and said that this was hers and it was retrieved from the deck that she was last seen on. Number 1, the sandal wasn't her size. Number 2, it wasn't her style. It was also revealed that Disney had edited the CCTV footage. Check out part 2 on this case for more information.
Have you ever felt like you've forgotten something but can't remember exactly what you forgot? Well, for this one woman, this feeling would lead to a terrifying discovery. She was on the bus on her way home from work one night when she was certain she left something behind in the office. She thought to herself, maybe it's nothing. She had a long day and she just wanted to go home for the night. But of course, she could have never expected the horrifying truth. This feeling of not being able to remember what she forgot became more and more intense. She thought about everything that happened that day. Her boss staring at her creepily, the secretaries gossiping, then she bumped into a man on the bus. She quickly said sorry, but he ignored her. As the bus came to her stop, she stood outside her home and couldn't shake the feeling anymore. She had to go back to the office to find out exactly what she forgot. It was very late at night at this point, but she made it back. She ran up the stairs and opened the office door, but what she saw could only be described as unimaginable. As this woman slowly knelt down on the floor, she finally realized what she left behind. It was her body lying on the floor, strangled to death. This is why you should never give your phone number to a stranger. One girl did this and ended up suffering an unimaginable fate. So a stranger stopped her on the street and said, please give an origami crane so Kasumi's heart transplant can be a success. She was intrigued by this request and she wanted to do some good, so she made the origami crane and handed it back. But things were not so simple. The stranger asked her to write her name and phone number in a notebook, and because so many other names were already written down, she did it too. But then the stranger started calling her, demanding that she make more origami cranes. Then the calls went from every day to many times a day. Eventually, the caller said if she didn't make a certain number of cranes per day, she would be dooming an innocent girl to die. She couldn't take it anymore. One day, her parents came into her room and noticed that she had trouble standing up and functioning. Eventually, she was sent to a mental hospital with no access to a phone. She got better afterwards, but on the day she was meant to leave the hospital, another unexpected incident happened. As she was about to leave, a stranger bumped into her in the hallway and whispered something in her ear. She ended up having a breakdown on the floor that led to uncontrollable screaming until she was sedated. The stranger had whispered, "Kasumi's dead. Let's see who will make cranes for you now." This is why you should always pay attention to details. A woman was brushing her hair when she found a little bump at the back of her head, so she called her husband to have him check it out for her. He said it looks like a button. It's small, round, hairless, and flat at the top. He joked around it with her, asking, "What do you think would happen if I pressed it?" Then he did, and the woman instantly leaned up and gave him a kiss. Then the husband kept pressing it as a joke, but something went wrong. It seemed like he pressed it all too many times, and a cool numbness spread down the woman's neck, around her arms and her legs. Her eyes automatically shut and her vision went black. A while later, the woman woke up and learned that she had fainted. The husband kept apologizing with tears in his eyes as if it was all his fault. Eventually, they both went about their lives and tried to forget about this incident, but the woman just couldn't, because afterwards, she came across a photo of her family in the living room. It was a photo of her and her husband's wedding propped up on a ceramic urn. She looked closer at the photo of her own face. She's smiling as if she's the happiest girl in the world, but there's a small scar under her left eyebrow, a scar that she now didn't have. How can you ever know what someone's true intentions are? For Alice, the family that she babysat for had a dark secret. They were a very rich family. They had a huge house and a seemingly perfect life, except that their daughter had a severe incurable illness. Doctors couldn't figure out what it was, but they told the parents that the young girl didn't have long to live. The parents did tell Alice this on the first day that she applied for the babysitting job, but what they didn't tell her was that they were willing to go to the extreme to make their daughter happy. Alice and this young girl quickly formed a bond. The parents loved this. They saw how much their daughter loved Alice. It was clear soon enough that she was becoming like the young girl's older sister and also her only friend. But one day things took a turn for the worst. The young girl's illness got very bad and eventually she could no longer breathe on her own. When her doctor said that there was nothing left to do but to take her off of life support, the parents were devastated. But they had one last thing planned. One thing that they would not tell Alice until it was too late. A way that she could help their daughter, no matter what it would take. Follow for part 2. How can you ever know what someone's true intentions are? Alice was the babysitter of a young girl with a severe incurable illness. They had developed a strong bond. Alice was almost like a sister to her and her only close friend. But once the young girl's illness got worse and she had to be taken off of life support, the mother didn't eat or sleep for days. The father was inconsolable until one day the father called Alice over. He said that they needed some help to get their daughter's room remodeled. He said that her mother couldn't stand to look at it anymore. Every night before bed, they could hear their dead daughter's cries coming from her old room. But things became quickly even more terrifying. They went to the young girl's room and said that they had to knock a wall down in order to remodel it. So together, all three of them got to work. Then the dad asked if they needed some water. Alice said sure, so the parents went to go get it. But as soon as they came back, Alice was shocked. They were wearing gas masks. They sprayed a substance into Alice's face and she blacked out. But when she woke up, the hole in the wall that she had knocked down was covered in bricks entirely. The door and the window were also bricked up. She began banging on the wall, screaming for help. And from the other side, she heard the faint voice of the dead girl's parents say, "We're sorry, but she needs you forever." Can you solve this mystery? This is the story about the murder of a group of kids that went to the same school, but things are not as simple as they seem. Someone is hiding something, and all the clues to what really happened are hidden in what I'm about to say. After the tragic murders of these boys, they had to each be buried in closed caskets because their bodies were so badly beaten. But someone noticed something strange at the funeral. He was a friend of one of the boys' parents, and he saw an elderly woman sitting alone, someone that he didn't recognize. When the funeral was over, she quietly went over to each headstone with a smile and placed a clover next to each one. Then she said a silent prayer. He thought she must be one of the dead boys' grandmas. He asked her, "Why did you place a clover on their grave?" She replied, "It's a happy flower. It brings good luck. You see, my grandson died too, but it was a different incident. He was bullied for a long time and one day he couldn't take it anymore. He hung himself in the school bathroom." The elderly woman began crying and left. He felt bad for her, but something felt off. That night, he decided to Google what clovers mean. It said that they were the symbol for revenge. What really happened here? Can you solve this mystery?